No, it's not late breaking news. This is Divided We Stand on Tuesday evening, the 16th of May, and I hope everybody can hear me. But Dave and I decided to go on tonight. So, first of all, I went to touch bases with my buddy Dave. Dave, you there? Can you hear me?
Now let me ask you a question. Where's this Dave and I decided to go on tonight?
Okay.
I'm being forced to do this by you.
All right.
Oh no, that's
Okay.
not it. Never mind. That has nothing to do
Okay.
with anything. What the hell? Hey Brian.
Yeah, well, black screen.
Yeah, black screen. Good job. I see
All
you're
right.
as what I like is like you are consistently incompetent. Incompetent to run the camera on Saturday, and now proving just as
Well, I
incompetent
want to have a
on.
split screen here. Hold on, let me. I don't know what the hell is going on here with this.
Don't you have scissors? Just cut it.
There we go. No, we may or may not get as many comments as usual because we are just on Facebook tonight, and this is a bit of an experiment. So those of you who are watching
Brian,
on
why don't you
Facebook,
why don't you explain a little bit what that, no, seriously, what that means about just Facebook and YouTube? We assume sometimes, I think, incorrectly, while most people just want to hear or view the show or view and hear the show, it's nice sometimes to give them some background. So, kind of maybe the difference between YouTube,
right.
Facebook, and why we're doing this.
Okay, as all of you know on Facebook here, this Facebook page is called the Divided We Stand group. It's a private group, people who commiserate together, and for want of better explanation, it's a group of 1,300 people who basically have the same agenda. We have the same opinion about the Republican people, however, or the Republican Party, I should say. We also have an arm of our group page, which is the YouTube Divided We Stand channel, and that channel allows us to have access to people outside of the group page every Saturday night, and people within the page can watch that channel. It's a little bit different on YouTube because again, the people aren't necessarily members of Divided We Stand. Maybe a third of them are, and anybody can actually watch it on YouTube. It doesn't matter if you're a member or not, or a subscriber. We also broadcast on Twitter. I don't believe we do LinkedIn. You have to have special permission for that. So we have three different platforms that we use, but our major platform in terms of actual views, in terms of videos, is YouTube. However, by far our largest membership is on the Facebook page. So if you're watching this now, this is where we're dedicating this program to tonight, and that is to the Facebook page. Now, many of you who are going to be watching this aren't going to be watching it live because people pop in and out of our Facebook page during the day. And what will happen is this is going to be recorded and you'll be able to watch it whenever. And then at some point, we'll probably upload this to YouTube. But this is kind of I don't want to say a new thing. Dave and I did this, I think, once before. But this is, it is rare for us to go on the weekdays, especially during work days where I work. And we usually can't work things out during those days. But today's kind of a good night for it. And we wanted to have kind of an add-on to our show. We had a very successful show this past Saturday night, and we had a few more, tidbits of information, some clarifications that we'd like to add. So we thought tonight would be a great night to go on. I don't have as much work tonight as I normally do, and Dave was free, so we'll put in an hour and we'll see what happens. But either way, please, if you are part of our Facebook group and you are on YouTube in any way or have friends who are like-minded, please subscribe. We appreciate that. So, Dave.
Yes.
Hopefully that basically answers the question.
Yeah, I think it is. It's interesting with social media, right? Which is what we're involved with in this. It has things rise and then they fall and then they get placed in an age group. Like really, if you think about it, if we had done this, well, 15 years ago, maybe, we would be on MySpace.
Right.
And nobody even knows MySpace. Or it changes so quickly in this world of electronic communication via computer or cell phone or tablet or whatever you use, right? Um, that things become dated. Like one of the laughing jokes now is with people, you know that someone hasn't really gotten too hip if they still have an AOL address. That's a joke. However, it doesn't really matter because all platforms all serve a purpose.
Right.
I think right now, if you had to rate it, I suppose, as of what is it, 8:06 on whatever day this is in the month of May. Um, let's see, how would it be? I'd probably still be Facebook, but Facebook falling numbers wise. YouTube, pushing it maybe a little bit over that. But for young people, it's all about TikTok. So somebody said, well, why aren't you on TikTok? Well, we just said that. While we would welcome any young viewers, that's not really the demographic that we strike and what we talk about. So, certainly I'd love if my granddaughter, who is 14, would watch the show, but I don't think 14-year-olds are going to watch the show. And I don't even think maybe up to 25. I think almost all the people that I know, and I don't know them all on the Facebook page, I know most all of them who regularly come into YouTube, are over the age of 35, which is kind of interesting because that means we could all run for president, Brian.
Right.
Somebody
That's
brought up,
right.
I was actually talking to my son today. He calls on his way into the university, and then we chat until he arrives to the parking lot, and then we stop. But we're talking again about the presidential race, and I mean he's really politically astute, but even he was a little unclear about Trump and the presidency and jail and conviction and indictment. And again, we'll start with this. Some people are saying, well, Trump's not going to be presidential nominee for the Republican Party. If nothing happens untoward, something that we really can't see and predict, Donald Trump will be the nominee for the Republican Party. Joe Biden will be the nominee for the Democratic Party. So we will have a replay of our last election. And the reason being, if you research what qualifications you need to be president of the United States, there's only three. We've mentioned it before, but I think maybe not each show, but every so often we should do it because there's still people unclear about it. You must be 35 years of age or older. You must have been born in the United States, and you must have lived in the United States for 14 years. If you satisfy those requirements, there are no other on the books preclusions, if you will. I think I just made up a word. To serving the presidency. So therefore, we've had three candidates, we mentioned before, run for president from a jail cell. So certainly can run. And there's nothing that says, outside of common sense, that you couldn't be president from a jail cell. You certainly, in American jurisprudence, you are innocent until proven guilty. So I think it would really be hard, again, unless there was some constitutional change, which there's really not enough time to do between now and 2024, or some kind of edict from Congress. And I don't even know if they have the power to do that. I really believe they don't at this point. It would take a change in the Constitution. So I just mentioned 35. So it's kind of interesting. No, what should I say? No serendipity to that number. But I just mentioned 35 as our age group. It seems to be so. We're looking at somewhere in our contemporaries. Now, I'm older than you. I'm 71, and I think you're 42 now. I can't remember.
63.
Yeah, so you're catching up.
But, you know.
So we're at the I'm at the, what would it be? I guess I'm the middle of the boomers because boomer starts
46.
45, 46,
46 to 64.
46 to 64 is the average thing. And this will be another, the reason this will be another election where baby boomers who are on their way out, it appears, will be at the top of the ticket. So age will be an issue. It will be an issue. And I think it's an issue that is understandable because you've got four different generations behind baby boomers now, who, of which at least, one, two, three of them would be positioned to be president, would be 35 and older. And it may well turn out that a generation well, not the millennials, they came after, maybe Generation Z, will never have a president. And what I find interesting about that, we're going to talk tonight. One of the reasons we wanted to go on was this continuing flap over CNN and Trump, and should he have been, shouldn't he have been on that town hall meeting? But the idea is that a president is supposed to represent all the people, right? I mean, that's really what they're supposed to do, and we don't have that for a couple ways now. We certainly don't have it by party. You know, Democrats and Republicans couldn't be further divided, I don't think. I mean, it's like having 14 Rio Grande rivers, the width of between there. But I also think another division, of course, is age. So it'll be interesting I'm going to sit back and watch this and see how it unfolds. Will young people, and by young people, that would be first time voters, 18, voters who don't, who will vote? And I think that's the key issue, is not how people will vote, because you won't know that until they cast their ballot. But who will vote will determine, as it does in every election, but I think even more so in this one. If you have a country that's basically a third, and a third leaning toward Democrat or liberal policies in governing, a third that is leaning toward Trumpism, conservatism, republicanism, whatever you want to call it. It's all one and the same. And about a third who are uncommitted. Now, of that third that are uncommitted, some of them won't vote no matter what. No matter what. They just will not vote for whatever reasons. But that is going to be decided pretty much by that, whoever can drag the biggest number of voters from that third. And that's where I think when we talk about the town hall tonight, that's where I want to focus the danger of what CNN did.
Right. I do want to add, just tangentially to what you said, Dave. Our group is basically generally baby boomers, but also it is a private group, so it is tougher for young people to get involved in this anyway. And again, as you said, TikTok is really the route for the young people, that demographic. And you're right, it will be, who's going to go out there and vote, and can you get them to go out there and vote? And of course, the Republican Party will do their best, and they know that too. And because it's a losing proposition for them when more people vote, that they will do their best to, try to limit that voting, and they're doing that already. Of course, we know that. But the topic today is a continuation of the topic about CNN's big mistake. If you look at our previous video on YouTube, we discussed the problem with the town hall. Since then, some more news has come out. I'm going to show you a few clips from Lawrence O'Donnell's program after the show, and then just to add, since then we've learned that CNN told their audience that they could not boo; they had to applaud. Okay, and I don't know what you can say about that other than it's kind of like a stage show now when you have something like that, and it became nothing but a pep rally. But there are other issues we're going to talk about, and that is specifically about Kaitlon Collins, who did the interview. On our thumbnail, you'll see a picture of her. I think she's only like 31 years old. She's very, very young.
She's very young, yes.
Right.
Couldn't even be president herself.
Right. And we're going to look at some of the things that Lawrence O'Donnell said about CNN, I mean, the choices that they could have made, because it wasn't as though they just, threw people in the audience and then they chose to have her as the moderator. Long before, they had, to have negotiation with Trump to see, who was going to be acceptable to him, because he's just not going to come on. And as you'll see, that it was very unlikely that Rachel Maddow or Chris Hayes, or even for that matter, Lawrence O'Donnell, was going to show up to be the moderator. So, Dave, we're going to go to the web here, and let me make sure that the speed is set correctly. And you'll tell me, Dave, if there is any issue where you can't hear the audio. Okay, so I have a few things metered out from this, so we won't be watching the video in its entirety, but we will be looking at quite a few spots in it. So let's just go to the web right here and see. All right, I'm going to. Okay, I think we're okay here. First of all, Dave, you should be able to see the screen there. We're good.
I do see the screen. No sound yet, but you haven't set any
No, I haven't
sound
said
up yet?
anything, sir. Right. Okay. So I'm gonna move ahead to the, well, it won't matter to you folks, but the 150 mark, and he brings up Kaitlon Collins in this now. I'm hoping that again you'll be able to hear this. So let's make sure that the other sound effects are off. Okay, and we should be good. All right. Were you able to hear that? Were you able to hear that, Dave?
No.
All right.
It looks like you're having an ad for the Gap.
Well, that I understand. Okay, let's just hope that this works now. Okay.
Fit to your build,
Yes.
your day,
Okay,
your
good.
style. Love the way you look.
George Soros is this foreign-born left-wing guy who essentially wants to change the nature of our country.
Alabama-born Kaitlon Collins was not yet working for CNN. She was working for Tucker Carlson then at a right-wing website where she fell for the lie that she was never fact-checked on, that George Soros was funding Black Lives Matter.
I think it's an issue also that the Democratic Party needs to address because so many Democrats have openly endorsed Black Lives Matter. And now that we see that this guy who is funding Hillary Clinton is also funding Black Lives Matter, that's a problem, and that's something that Americans should be aware of.
That was 20.
Stop.
Right, that's why I want to stop right there. Right.
All right. So this in a, I hate to use a cliche, but I think it applies here. In a nutshell, what you just witnessed is part of the problem with politics and news today. What do I mean by that? Well, you have stations that purportedly are news stations who are definitely in one camp or the other. And of course, on the right, you have the king, Fox, and the two pretenders to the throne, Newsmax and AON. Then on the other side, you have MSNBC, who is definitely leans to the left. And how can you tell that? We can see the commentary or the reporters. Lawrence O'Donnell, no question, is a liberal. Speaking for MSNBC.
By the way, I've got to interject. When you say to the left, we're not saying that there's something wrong with that.
We're just saying
right.
Well, no, there is something wrong with that. Okay, there is. And I'll tell you what it is. By definition, and I'm a former journalist, by definition, news is supposed to be objective. Okay, by definition. We all learned way back when in journalism, report the facts. But here's the problem, of course, the facts that you report are often skewed by the people you get the facts from. So if you have a Donald Trump who has no basis in fact whatsoever, right? Anytime you report anything he says, you're almost assured, unless you believe in Donald Trump, that he's not reporting something not saying something that's a fact. Mm-hmm. And so that's one problem when you have news stations now. And so if you're a conservative, you don't ever watch MSNBC because that's the enemy. And if you're really a diehard, you don't ever watch Fox, Newsmax, or AON to get any news. Now, the other thing is there's a blur, and this is where the town hall comes in. All right, Prince, I'm going to let you play every man. I'm going to ask you some questions. If there had been a fire at the site of that town hall, there wasn't a town hall, it was just a fire, would that have been legitimate for any news organization to report?
If it were a fire? Sure.
Yes. Sure. That's a news event, right? And the one way it works is something happens and the organization determines it's news. And sometimes you get into great arguments. Maybe sometime we'll do a show with our audience about what is news, what makes news. Why should you report this thing and not that thing? But the idea historically of news from, and again, I don't want to go into great detail, but let's say from World War II to 1980, basically, America's greatest years, if you're looking at it as a world power. The idea was that a news organization reported the news, didn't make the news. But there were a couple of exceptions then. Newspapers, who then were the predominant form of news dissemination, radio moving up, and then of course television overtaking it. So now I probably be what do you, I mean, I don't have a statistic on this, but I'm gonna guess internet would probably be number one, right? TV probably two, radio three, and newspapers a very distant four.
Right.
So,
and probably online newspapers at that, for the exception of the Times.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So in other
and
words,
the Post.
that's an interesting point. The journalist debate. If you read a Washington Post article on Yahoo, are you reading internet news or Washington
right,
Post?
Or Post, right.
And both sides can claim credit for it, if you will.
Right.
And that gets to another problem, which I'm not going to talk about tonight, but maybe sometime we'll show. The problem that TV and radio has caused for print. I mean, but that's a whole different area. But you have this. So that's. But you still had, even when you had only print, or print as a predominant, you still had two areas that I think deserve to be still discussed and talked about, and Americans should understand that. One is called commentary. The other is an editorial. And what are the difference? Basically, they are not facts. They are opinions. All right. And in commentary, it's one person's opinion, right? It's their take. Now you have people like George Will, who was brilliant. There's no question about it. I disagree with 92.7% of what he says because I'm a liberal, but he is a brilliant, and he would be like the stellar example of a conservative columnist who has been for years.
He was the heir to William F. Buckley, basically.
Exactly. Although interesting enough, it's interesting. Buckley was more of a television personality than George Will ever was. Buckley was known, and Buckley had a foil back then too on television, Gore Vidal, and who was
right.
They had some legendary. In fact, Vidal at one point, it's one of the most interesting moments in journalistic history. Vidal baited Buckley enough that Buckley kind of said, "You gay fuck," and not in those words.
Right. Called him a queer.
And that's that was the idea. And
which was kind of interesting that somebody who had such a cavalier use of the English language, talking about Buckley, who went to the physical, emotional mode when it came to Gore Vidal.
You're right, Brian. That was the idea. Buckley was this machine, right? Who just used logic. He was Spock, supposedly. Well, he wasn't Spock. He was Dr. McCoy from for any Star Trek fans out there. But so you have this commentary. The other thing that newspapers had and still have is editorial. So editorial is also opinion, but editorial is the opinion of the organization, written by an individual or a committee. Most big newspapers have an editorial board, and they kind of work it out together. Smaller newspapers have an editor. Oftentimes it was written by the publisher. That was one place where the publisher would come in and say, well, what's the publisher? The publisher basically is who owns it, right? That's whether it's a newspaper, a radio station, TV station, whatever. Even on the internet. Elon Musk is the publisher of Twitter right now, okay? He owns it. He can do what he wants with it. So there was always a blurring, even back then, of commentary, editorial, and news. But the idea of news was supposed to be objective, based in fact. Now, in reality, that wasn't true. Okay, in reality, that wasn't true. Because every reporter, myself included, always has personal biases that seep in. But your job as a reporter was to keep those personal biases out. That's really what it was. Not to show them, whether it was liberal, conservative, whatever. Now, another problem that crept in that also reflects in what we're going to talk about tonight is the cult of personality. All right, George Will, who I think is probably one of the most influential people of the past 20 years, maybe, in conservative thought. You could put him on TV and nobody would know who he was. I mean, very few people, right?
Very few people, correct.
But put Anderson Cooper on. Put Carson Tucker on. Put Sean Hannity on. When Rush Limbaugh, so the personalities become big. And what happens is, I would submit that personalities drive TV stations more than the news content. What's the danger in that? Well, they become stars. And what's the danger for the network? The network is trying to make a star. And Kaitlon was put in a position that I think was untenable for her, but she couldn't turn it down. There are reports out there, which I believe, that she was being groomed to be take Rachel Maddow's 9 o'clock spot. And it used to be, Brian, that the sweet spot for TV news was 6 p.m., right? 6 p.m. local, 6:30 national.
But by the way, that's almost
Waterfront,
hard to believe, though, thinking, I mean, in terms of what she said about George Soros, a lot of the Jew baiters would be, bringing
there,
up Soros. Why
there
would
you are.
she have gotten involved? And that was only 5 years ago. This isn't like it's 25 years ago.
Well, there's a couple things I think, and you have to ask Kaitlon. But one of the things that I think is at that point she was trying to curry favor with Fox, right? I mean, she worked for Fox. Did she drink the Kool-Aid? I don't know. Did she come as a conservative? Because again, there are a lot of people. It is a business, and there are people. I could not do that if I were young.
Right, and there are people who would not do that.
I couldn't work for Fox just because I couldn't believe in it, right? I worked for 3 newspapers, and while they certainly weren't blameless nor faultless, I believed in what they were trying to do was correct over the years I was there. So that's why she would say that. Now, what we don't know, and you're going to get a little bit more into depth when Lawrence O'Donnell picks on it, is what was CNN thinking? Okay.
Right.
So let me ask you, Brian. You don't know. I don't know. What do you think CNN was thinking when they put together the town hall meeting? What do you think they were trying to do?
Well, this is going to sound a little bit, I don't want to say bizarre, but I'm going back even a little bit further, where it's you've seen Don Lemon is gone, but I think he was going to be gone anyway. Chris Cuomo is gone, and for specific reasons. But we do know that it sounds like to me that CNN was giving up competing against MSNBC because they had to share. I mean, if you took MSNBC together with CNN, they might have greater numbers than Fox. I'm not sure, but maybe. Okay, maybe. But they weren't able to compete. MSNBC was getting, as you would say, the liberal viewer. So CNN was trying to get more of the right wing type people, or not right wing, but more centrist to the right.
Right.
They have a new CEO, and to me, this was an example of doing it because what better way? They knew that people like you and I don't want to watch that bullshit on the town hall, which it was, but they are going to get people from the right who normally would not watch CNN. Correct. They're now going to watch it because they've got Donald Trump, their guy, on.
Now the question becomes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian. No,
I know where you're going to leave it. Well, I'm just saying. I was going to say that the question is going to be, what was CNN thinking before that, as far as how they got to the point where they chose that moderator, and as we've learned in the last couple of days, how they were going to set up the audience. And that's what bothers me the most.
Right. Well, I spoke to that on the last show. Of all the things about this particular town hall, the thing that bothered me most was the audience. Not the audience handpicked and ordered what to do. And that nothing could be further from news than that. You couldn't get any further away than that. It would be impossible. You could argue Donald Trump is a news source. He is. Donald Trump has been a news source for at least 40 years, right? Mm-hmm. Most of it not positive. One of the things in the race, the 2016 race, one of the things that you heard time and time again was that at first the media, and I don't really like that term, Brian, and I'll tell you why. Because the functions of television, radio, newspapers, and the internet are so different, right? What they're designed to do, what they do, but that is the term that we use, the media. So taking them all, lumping them all together. They did not know how to treat Donald Trump. They thought he was a joke, almost universally. That was the idea. And he was such a joke and so outlandish that it became news. For example, one of the definitions is news is it has new in it. I mean, it doesn't really derive from that word. And new is anything out of the ordinary, not to be expected. For example, there will tonight, all over America, there will be a series of murders, right? I mean, unfortunately, we live in a world, and have lived in it forever, where people murder other people. And most of those murders will be reported in some form or another, depending on how big they are. And people would say, they lump that in. They only talk about bad news. They never talk about good news. Well, that's because murder is out of the ordinary, right?
Right.
There will be people who live through the night tonight in Washington, D.C., then there will be killed in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And that's the idea. And that's, I mean, honestly, that's what makes it reportable. However, you do have an obligation to put things into perspective. And I think that, again, is where CNN lost this. They didn't know. I'll give the media the fact that they didn't know how to cover Donald Trump initially. I think, I mean, I think I would have done the same. I mean, he was just such great copy, right? Initially, 2016. And then suddenly, and I date it from this moment. I've never really talked to anybody who's, and there are hundreds and thousands of people more knowledgeable than I am. But I really always look back at Trump. The moment that I saw the campaign change was the first is when he attacked the Mexicans. They're rapists and maybe some good people. I mean, we never heard anything like that in mainstream national politics before. And then the idea of him controlling these crowds that became Trump acolytes. They weren't Republicans at that point. Now, there were enough of those, and they exerted enough power that they now are the Republican Party.
Right.
The Trumpers that we dismissed in 2016 are now the Republican Party. All right. And, you like him, I like him, Steve Schmidt. I think he's one of the most astute political observers, still is a Republican, but certainly takes his party to task about this. Steve Schmidt is now the outlier. Talk about what can be done, and what you're saying, well, you deviate. No, the town hall, the media creates this image. Liz Cheney now, her father was viewed as Darth Vader, if you were liberal. And now Liz Cheney, simply for being an American. That's all she did.
Well, that's where a lot of people say, "Well, it can't get any worse." Well, the truth is, it can, and it still can get worse.
And it is. When you think about this, I mean, again, Republicans, Trumpers, whatever you want to say, they'll dismiss this. But this is a fact. At the time she fell out of favor with her Republican Party, Liz Cheney had the most conservative voting record in Congress. And the party that's supposed to represent conservatives threw her to the curb and instead grabbed onto whores like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert. And I feel safe in calling them whores in a political sense. Not I don't refer to nor care about what they do sexually. So back to Kaitlon. What I think happened, and this again, we'd have to ask CNN, and maybe some of this Lawrence O'Donnell clip will go more into it. First of all, what was your intention, right? I think that's true of everything. Like whether you're a person or a business organization, you have an intent when you do something, correct? Hopefully you've thought about it, you figured it out, and my intention is, and you have an expected outcome from that intention.
Right.
And again, it doesn't matter if you're a human being or an organization, but you can't control how others view and see what you've done, right?
Right.
So you lose some control. So it would be interesting for CNN. What was their intention? What did they expect as an outcome? What did people view it as, and what impact it will have on CNN?
Right. All right. Well, we're going to find out now. We're going to go back to the web, Dave. We're at the 250 mark. I'm going to just move it up just a wee bit.
There are people working at CNN right now who knew that was crazy talk then. And those people all have more experience interviewing presidents and presidential candidates, but Donald Trump chose Kaitlon Collins. That is common in these situations with news networks. The candidate, in effect, chooses who the moderator will be. CNN may have said the name Kaitlon Collins first before Donald Trump did, but Trump then accepted that name when he could have rejected that name and gotten anyone else he wanted at CNN.
All right, let's just take it at that, because you have experience, Dave. So, and of course, now he has experience, obviously, with networks, and he knows how things work. As he knows himself, they have to discuss these things before the show.
Let's give Donald Trump his due. Okay.
First of all, do you think Lawrence O'Donnell was correct in what he was saying? That they,
See, I have to defer to Lawrence O'Donnell because he's in the mix, right? I mean, I'm not there.
Mm.
Um, I in the 70s and 80s when I was a journalist, again, a print journalist, no, the candidate never would have picked the question, the questioner. It just wouldn't happen. But if you really want that town hall, and apparently CNN really want that town hall, and Trump will walk, he will walk. He will just say no, unless he gets his own way.
Right. Could
So,
you have seen any scenario where Chris Hayes would have been interviewing him? I don't see how
no,
he would, because he
no,
wouldn't be able to handle it.
well, I don't know that Chris Hayes would want to do it.
That's why he doesn't
Well,
appear in court.
you know, I said that too quickly and glibly. Of course, Chris Hayes would want to do it. Any
Right.
newsman would want to be the one to pin down Donald Trump or take Donald Trump down. If you're American. Having said that, I'm going to have to go with what Lawrence O'Donnell said. Now, I've read and heard that again, it was a grooming process. For Kaitlon, a step up. Did you know who she was before she did that?
Well, quite frankly, I do have her bio. I know she's from Alabama. We
No,
can look at that
I mean,
later.
did you
I personally, I have seen her face before, but no, I had
No,
no knowledge about her.
she now, just like CNN, is a talking point, right?
She's only 31. I mean, she couldn't have much of a history anyway.
No, but I'm just saying now her name is much has a much larger base of name recognition than she ever had before. That is good for her. So she would take that on. CNN obviously is looking for, as I said, some replacement. Rachel Maddow is going to be hard to replace. Just like Tucker Carlson is going to be hard to replace. It's not that easy. It's not that easy because, again, as you get this cult of personality, there are people who will never watch MSNBC from 9 to 10 again because Rachel's not there.
Not there.
They followed Rachel, not the organization, not the news organization. There will be people who will never watch Fox again because they followed Tucker, not the organization. And that's the problem that you have when you have this cult of personality, and yet you cannot help it, okay? Because traditionally, I mean, the history of newspapers was they didn't really start giving bylines until the 70s, late 60s and 70s. They were unnamed art, they were just nameless. So you wrote your ass off, but you never got your name on there.
Right.
And even there, though, your name would never quite be, but with radio, it was your voice. So newspapers had name, radio has name and voice, and now television has name, voice, and sight. And so whether we're talking about Don Lemon or Kaitlon or Tucker, whoever we're talking about, the question becomes how much is their personality, how much is news, and how do you handle, what was it? What the line from Sound of Music? What do you do with a girl like Maria? I think that's how it went or something like that. And so what do you do with Donald Trump? I mean, seriously, I have no idea. I think I mean, I could almost, okay, this is talking completely hypothetical, but I could not envision myself interviewing Donald Trump for an hour without walking out at some
Well,
point.
that's essentially what Lawrence Donald said. There is a way to deal with him, and you have to demand the answer, and you have to ask him questions where he can't get out of it. We'll get to a few of those things.
And just one thing I want to say, and I'll probably discuss it more later, is an effective tool was to find a really powerful first question, right? No softball question. And then if you don't like the answer, just ask it again and ask it again and ask it again and ask it again until they walk off.
I think that's a good place to start because you just mentioned the good
Right.
first question. So let's check this out so our audience can see this, and then I'll have you comment it. Because Dave, folks, if you don't know this, Dave mentioned this, but if you're just popping in, Dave was a journalist, a very experienced journalist, so he knows this field very, very well, and he's a perfect guy to have on tonight. Let's go up to 5:45. Okay. We're about here. All right.
Why should Americans put you back in the White House? That was the first question. And of course, Donald Trump gave a speech and he got laughs right away. And he ignored, as the question invited him to, the preamble to the question that CNN worked on for weeks. Preambles to questions are meaningless. It's the question that counts. And here's what the CNN team came up with as the hard-hitting, totally ignorable preamble to the question. Your polls show that you are dominating the Republican race right now, but you are also under active federal investigation for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Your first term ended with a deadly riot at the Capitol, and you still have not publicly acknowledged the 2020 election results. Why should Americans put you back in the White House? To CNN's surprise, Donald Trump ignored all of those points in the preamble, leaving Kaitlon Collins hopelessly trying to wrestle him into answering the question, can you publicly acknowledge that you did lose the 2020 election? It was a very conventional line of questioning for Washington reporters. Most of them would have chosen such hopeless, open-ended questions. And most Washington reporters could not have done better than the question, do you have any regrets about your actions on January?
And by the way, he did. I'm gonna kind of go fast forward and let you comment on it. But he did mention, one of the questions, for example, that could have been asked of him was, you saw what was happening during January 6th. You saw the insurrection. Why didn't you call the military or the National Guard? I mean, specifically right there. That was a tough, but these were questions that were not asked, and so she asked this just mundane question: why should people vote for you?
Let's look at that question and break it down as a question. First of all, what's good about the question you have up right there now? It is simple, right? It's clearly worded and few words. One of the things you learn very quickly as an interviewer is keep your questions brief and to a point, right? Now, there's two kinds of questions. There are closed questions and open questions. Okay, Brian, let's do a little example for our audience. Did you have dinner tonight?
Yes.
What did you have for dinner tonight?
Vegetarian burger.
All right. That's a closed question, right? Brian, did you like your dinner tonight?
Yes.
Now, you tried to close that question, but it's an open-ended question. Yes, followed by, why did you like that dinner?
Right. Okay. Well, you want me to answer? Or you just because Well, I could say a number of reasons. Number one, I have an ethical issue with eating meat, so I prefer eating vegetarian burgers. The burger itself was very, very tasty because it tasted very similar to a burger. Yet it was vegetarian, and I had a few other things with it that made it taste nice. And
now, I think everybody kind of gets that
right
idea. What happens with an open-ended question is the response is not a light switch, right? It's not a light switch. Now, sometimes you can open it up too much, and I think that's what I would blame.
Because they can go anywhere with it, or they can just go off topic.
Well, think about this. Do you have any regrets about your actions on January 6th? No.
And you know what he's going to say? He's going to say no.
Trump could have called. Then it's, well, all of a sudden you're in trouble. Because, why? I mean, Donald Trump is not going to answer the why and the how questions. I basically believe that he doesn't know enough to answer the how questions. How does something happen? And why doesn't enter into his thinking. His only thought process deals with what is good for me and how does this thing benefit me?
And can I give you an example? Okay, during this, and this isn't, I don't know, maybe Lawrence talked about this, but we'll just discuss this. He said that if he had been president, this war would be over in 24 hours. Okay, we know this is bullshit, but that's what he would say, and some of his clientele would of course believe him. But if you would think if somebody were a good moderator, they would say, well, actually, even though there was the invasion after you were president, while you were president, there was a war going on in Luhansk. Why weren't you able to stop that? I don't even think he'd even know what Luhansk is, but it would be the perfect
No,
question to ask because it would have exposed him.
and of course now you're looking at it logically. All right, the emperor. What Donald Trump has successfully avoided, and I'm not real sure how. He is a perfect example of the emperor has no clothes.
Well, he
Like,
had no
really,
problem because he had Kaitlon Collins there. If it
well,
had been George
so
Will, that would have been a different story.
well, yes, I think so. Of course, again, you're back to would Trump have agreed to Will. What
Right.
happens now is you really have, and this is a perfect example of that. You have two powerful beings. If a corporation can be, I disagree with the Supreme Court. I don't think corporations are a person, but for this moment, I'm going to personalize CNN. You have CNN, which is a real power. Okay, I
Right.
mean, it makes a hell of a lot of money. It also has established a reputation, which doesn't matter that much. But CNN was the first. You know, Ted Turner got all this started. 24/7 news, laughed out of the world, and he had a foresight. Maybe that's why he was a billionaire. He had a good foresight. But you have this idea. You have this force of CNN versus this force of Donald Trump. Trump doesn't compromise, all right? So who does that leave to compromise if CNN wants him on? It leaves, in this case, CNN or a
Right.
news organization. Now, the real question is, I think, was that town hall necessary? I don't see any reason for it. And I think, again, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it damaged CNN more than helped it. I really do.
Right. I would agree.
And that certainly wasn't their intent. Now, there is a school of thought that any publicity is good publicity, right? Because it brings your name to the forefront. But in a country as divided as ours, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I always smile when they say liberal CNN, right? No, not really. It's not really anything. You know, I mean, it's not. It's really bland. Okay, and what people want now is they want that commentary, they want those editorials, they want a slant.
Right, because that's
all
what they're
that
doing
news.
anyway now. The young kids are looking on the internet for their news. They're choosing their news. It's
Right.
a different world. It's not.
Well,
We're not going to Reuters for our news. You know, if you're a young
No.
kid.
And again, you can't go back historically, but if you were to pick the greatest newsman of the 20th century, in terms of, it would be, I think television would be Walter Cronkite.
Right.
I don't think it's be close. And actually, Douglas Brinkley, who's my favorite historian, I've told him that. I've had a chance to talk to him. He relates. If you ever want to learn something, and he's written about it, he's as good as it gets. He did a biography of Cronkite, and Cronkite was quite a flamboyant personality outside of the news. But what he did do is he objectified. It was Uncle Walter, right? People believed him, so it was still called a personality.
Right.
But it was different. And what made Cronkite different is he came up through print journalism. He did that was kind of the organization. You started with print, then you did radio, and then if you got into television, that was the route. And now, I don't know. I could have looked it up. I didn't. With Kaitlon, I don't think she probably has written any. You know, didn't come up through that. We come up directly through television news. Now, another danger that you have, it's the same thing with politics. Here's a question for you. Do you believe someone could be a politician and run for office without ego?
I suppose it's possible. Yes. I mean, not very. I mean, a very rare instance, but yeah.
No, I think again, it's a job that, first of all, if you're going to be on TV, can you be ugly? Now, that's put on by the network. I'm not talking about you force yourself, right? In other words, you just become such a news source that you end up there. But no, they're going to pick someone who's attractive.
Well, look at Kaitlon Collins. That's a perfect example.
And what I find interesting is, and I don't know this, and this may be even Freudian in psychology depth, Fox, was known for having the blonde-haired bimbos, right? That was their thing, and
Right.
the thing was old men leer at them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Kaitlon is not a blonde, so is that why CNN chose her? I don't know. And there certainly have been dominant females before in news. The most dominant print journalist, just because she wasn't that good, but she outlived everyone, was Helen Thomas, who was just got the first question at the White House for 20 years, something like that.
But doesn't it seem a little strange at the age of 31 She does a town hall with Donald Trump at the age of 31.
I agree.
With all the other people with experience, Poppy Harlow, all the people that they have, and then all of a
Again,
sudden they chose her. Well,
it
again,
comes
it
down
goes back to Trump.
and certainly they had to agree on her, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what we're
Well,
saying.
she's pleasing to the eye, so the people are going to. CNN certainly knows that.
And I'm not one. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If I don't really question her politics because she was on Fox. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I think.
But what she said about with George Soros, it's uncalled for. The way she said
Well,
it.
on Fox News, that's a fact. They believe in alternate facts. Remember, I mean, that's so. I mean, I'm not excusing her, or exempting her. I'm just saying. I think if I had been advising her, and I wasn't, and certainly I would never do that. But I would have said not to do the show. Not to. I mean, doing Trump right now is kind of a no-win situation unless you are prepared to walk off, unless you are prepared to just really become a prick if you're a male or a bitch if you're a female and just stay with that one question, not let him move. And I don't even know how you could corral him. Joe Biden couldn't corral him in the debate. Remember, he had to say, "Would you shut up, man?"
Man, yeah, he could. He just gave up at that point.
And I don't know because Trump is not like other politicians. Now, unfortunately, because other politicians have seen the success of Donald Trump, they're trying to emulate Trump now, right?
Right.
And Ron DeSantis, he doesn't have the charisma of Donald Trump. No, Donald Trump has the name recognition. I don't want to use the word charisma, but he has the P.T. Barnum factor, right? I mean, he does. That's what he has. He's a con
He's
man.
the carnival barker. That's what he is.
Exactly what he is. And it doesn't matter. Apparently, I mean, everybody knows he's guilty of all kinds of things. Again, no felonies yet. So I think CNN, my estimation, CNN made a horrible choice in airing the video, and I'll give you 3 or 4 reasons why I think that. First of all, how do you now not air a town hall with Ron DeSantis? Do you say, well, we only air it with the front runner? If
Right.
that's true, aren't you influence the election, right? Because you're giving more publicity to the front runner, and that's only going to give more him or her more publicity. So I think they did that. Again, a cliche, but Pandora's box. They opened it. Who now gets a town hall, right? Secondly, did we learn anything new about Donald Trump? No.
Nothing.
No. There's nothing new to learn about Donald Trump. Seriously, there could be details, right? But I don't think there's anything new we can learn about Donald Trump. So that didn't serve the purpose. Did it serve the purpose to drive ratings? The ratings weren't as good as expected. They really weren't. They thought they would get higher numbers, but that's another thing. We're so fragmented now. What I don't know, Brian, you might know. I have cable TV. You have cable TV. 300 stations, maybe total. Options you have at any given time, depending on how much, how many premium services you buy, etc.
Right.
And so numbers aren't what they were, right? If you get 10 million viewers on, say, a show like Yellowstone, which is very hot now with as a show, or on HBO,
White Lotus.
or Succession. And here's a hint for anybody who loses the show. I'm going to talk quite a bit about Succession and Donald Trump and real life because this last episode really hit home. It was, in short, it was an election night, and it was very interesting when life imitates art. But back to CNN and what happens with that. So, did they win or did they lose? And how do you define winning or losing? I said if their idea was one, and I'm saying this possibility, if they wanted to get Kaitlon exposed, out there, they succeeded, right? More people know her name and her look today than did 2 weeks ago. Kaitlon Collins. If they wanted to get themselves in position to be talked about, it was successful. If they wanted to get Donald Trump to reveal something, it was totally unsuccessful. I don't know how you get Donald Trump to reveal anything, but certainly that wasn't it. And then you got to ask yourself, what did Kaitlon get out of it? What did Miss Collins get out of it? And
Right.
again, I don't know. I don't know what if her idea was I can trap Donald Trump into telling the truth. That didn't happen. If the idea was I want to get some name recognition because I do want Rachel Maddow's spot, then she might have helped herself or hurt herself, depending. Because it's probably, again, just like America, 50-50. I've read that there are about 50% of the journalists say she acquitted herself as well as could be expected. Some have even gone to say she did an excellent job. And then the other side is just saying, she was just steamrolling out. And then there's Donald Trump. What did Donald Trump to get expected out of it? Donald Trump got it all. Donald Trump got it all. He was the winner. And CNN set it up in such a way that with that moderator, with that format, and with that audience, there could be no other outcome.
It was like it's just one of those half-an-hour infomercial, basically. That's what it sounded like.
Well, I think I'm probably gonna get this wrong. I should have written it down, but his campaign, members of his campaign staff said, "Thank you, CNN, for that hour-long advertisement." Basically, what they're saying, and that's what it was.
Right.
Now, did anybody change? Now you get to the other side. Did anybody change their mind about Donald Trump? I don't think anyone who watched that changed their mind. I think people who weren't going to vote for Donald Trump either didn't watch it or came away more convinced than ever than they wouldn't. People who are going to vote for Donald Trump came away still voting for Donald Trump or more convinced. Now, what is a little bit disturbing, there are some people who was in that audience who, while Republican, were not necessarily Trumpers going in. And some news organizations have asked them. Now, they're individuals. It's not a scientific poll. And they said some of them are more apt to vote for Trump for the way he handled that. So Donald Trump is a clear winner. In the CNN town hall, no questions about it. Now, what's interesting is, would CNN do a similar show with Joe Biden? And my guess is yes. They would.
Under the same circumstances, in other words, just invite pro Biden voters.
I can't say,
and not let them boo.
They would get. Well, there have been agreements in the past not to boo. That I just thought that was kind of ridiculous. If you're gonna have 100, I don't know, what was it, the audience, 200 people? I have no idea, right? I have no idea what it was. It's out there somewhere. But let's use 200 and let's use 200. Well, if you're 200 Trump supporters, why the hell are they going to boo anyway? If they're going to boo anybody, they're going to boo Kaitlon Collins for questions. They're not going to boo their idol Donald Trump. Now, the problem is Joe Biden is no Donald Trump, and that's why he's a better president. That alone right there. But he cannot command that stage like Trump can, because Trump is an evil force of nature, just like a hurricane, just like a tornado. He comes through, and the ultimate end is destruction, and he moves on. Now, will that influence the election? No. That will be a blip. That right now, that's a big thing because it's a blip. But the next thing that happened, remember, and you mentioned it on the show, Trump's appearance in Iowa was canceled due to inclement weather or threatening weather or whatever it was, right, on Saturday. And yet, his main rival, DeSantis, was able to attend 2 big Iowa meetings right there. And his numbers come up in Iowa. So again, there's so much between now and the election that can change things. So this will be a kind of a forgotten blip. I think maybe it'll be used someday in journalism classes to say this was a bad example, but probably not. Probably this is a moment that's going to pass. What's the news cycle? 2 weeks at best. Right. I mean, and I'm not holding myself above that. When I get to Washington Post in the morning, and they have a headline on there that Russia is still at war with Ukraine, I forget sometimes that Russia is at war with the Ukraine. I mean, I just forget that. My life.
And it's really heating up too, by the way. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I understand. But I mean, that's something that's the impact when it came, right? It's sort of like COVID, right? I mean, COVID is no longer the threat that it was, but I mean, my God, it dominated everything. And I just think, again, I guess my final comment on the CNN, I think that was a sad way to start a presidential campaign for news. for the news media.
Well, if they were looking for numbers, maybe they got it. You said they didn't get as many numbers as they thought they were going to get. But if they're trying to position themselves, that's the only thing I can think of, that CNN's trying to position themselves. And I don't know where they position themselves. To be honest with you, where do they go? They can't go to the left. They or they're going to be second place again. They can't go to the right because Fox is going to outfox them. But they can get some right wing viewers now. I mean, maybe. I mean, that's about it.
And it will be interesting because the media is in play, right? Because I think what may have a more impact in the long run on the media is Tucker Carlson leaving Fox. I think that may have more of an impact in this town hall meeting.
Did you hear that today? I think it was New York Times or the Washington Post. One of the others said that was perhaps part of the agreement with Dominion in the case, to settle the case, is that he had to be fired.
Well, I'm sure one of two things happened. Either he was the face of the Dominion suit, right? So Fox felt they had to get rid of him, or Dominion brought that up as a consequence. And Dominion, if you did, I love you for that.
Well, let's wait and see what Smartmatic does. Smartmatic can do the same thing.
Well, and that's what we have to hope. We have to hope that nobody gives up. And now there's starting to be more encouraging signs, right? Donald Trump versus women he's 0-2 recently. For the first time, he's starting to lose the battle with women. 2 court cases have come back where he was involved with a woman and not in his favor. Now you've got Dominion case. You've got other, people. I just hope, you got to keep after them. It's the same as, those of us who speak out have to continue to speak out. Those of us who vote have to keep encouraging others to vote because the stakes are too big, Brian. They're just too big. If it's Trump and Biden, just like in 2020, you're voting for the America you want, and they are incompatible with one another. They cannot coexist. They cannot and move anywhere, right? They can't. They're just too diametrically opposed. So CNN, you didn't ask me, but I think you made a mistake on more levels than you had successes in that particular instance.
All right, fair enough. Well, I think that really helps clear up what we were talking about on the show last Saturday night. I just knew something was missing. There were some other things that had to be clarified, and I think that we kind of covered that. So I want to ask you, David, anything else on your mind you want to cover tonight?
Not really. I mean, I kind of, it's funny. I mean, we're all creatures of habit, correct? And I've kind of gotten the habit of just kind of setting if I see something online, because I said I don't watch TV news and I don't listen to radio news. So if I see something online and I think it might have some impact on what I want to say on it, I kind of set it aside, and then I really just study it Saturday. So I can honestly say sometimes I go to a show with no ideas, but usually what I do is I try to set aside sometime Saturday to go over these articles or these things that I picked up. Sometimes repetitive, interesting article saying that Robert Kennedy, who is declared for the Democratic, is the closest version you could get in the Democratic Party to Donald Trump. Maybe I'll talk about that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so nothing really.
Well, I know that John Kennedy from Louisiana is the closest thing to Donald Trump, but he's a Republican. Well, he's a sicko.
Well, today we're laughing when I was talking to my son. I brought up, my unholy trio of Boebert, Green, and Gates, and he kind of with Gomer and Gosar and the West. I said, you kind of pick your geographical spot, right? You can attack the Southern Republicans, or you can attack the Midwestern Republicans, or you can attack the far Western Republicans, because they're all completely out of kilter with what I believe was the Republican Party of even 20 years ago, as recent. Right. Donald Trump will go down in history, and whether he was just, chicken egg, was he no, but certainly he will go down as someone who was a flashpoint when American politics changed. Now, he didn't. He's not that convincing. Okay, people have to feel, what do I say, something he said or something he did or something he said he was going to do has to strike a responsive chord. And again, I just point out, I've used this before, but I just think it's so pertinent. At the same time, he's attacking Mexicans, right? And doing the border thing. They were refurbishing the hotel that became Trump Hotel in Washington D.C. And probably during the time of refurbishing, I don't know. I'm going to make this up because it's really near the White House. It's what, 2 blocks from the White House. And I was working at the museum on Pennsylvania Avenue at the time. And I'd walk by there. I don't want to say, probably on an average at least once a week, maybe twice. I never saw anyone but a Mexican construction worker working there. So certainly, that's Donald Trump, right? Don't do what I do what I say. And that's what a con man does. And we said it before, but it bears repeating. I don't understand, honestly, how a woman can vote for Donald Trump. I don't see how a Christian can vote for Donald Trump. I don't see how a gay person can vote for Donald Trump. I don't see how a poor person can vote for Donald Trump. I do see how Aryan Nation people can vote for Donald Trump. I do see why gun advocates can vote for Donald Trump. But isn't that interesting? I wonder if there's something I just thought about, Brian. I wonder if Donald Trump has ever fired a gun.
I don't know, but if he has, I'd be surprised.
And yet he becomes the champion of those who, the Second Amendment. I call them the Second Amendment wrongers because they're wrong. They're wrong with their interpretation of the Second Amendment. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court in a 5-4 vote agreed with them, but the Supreme Court was wrong too. So I just find that interesting. Now, the other thing, maybe I will research this week, and maybe you have something already can answer. Where the hell did the NRA go?
Right, they've laid really low of late.
Why, and the question is why? Well, they had internal problems, right? I mean, they were actually
right. They had money problems, and then
embezzling money from.
Perhaps because there's just so many shootings each day that if they do make any comments, probably just best for them to just lay off.
And they have purchased, or they have helped enough people into Congress who support their way, because the American people favor realistic gun regulations. They do. Right. Every poll shows that. And yet we don't get them because either the NRA is convinced people, or they have enough funding in there. And look, my least favorite Supreme Court justice, of course, is Clarence Thomas. He has no business being on the court. He never did. I believe, although again innocent until proven guilty, I believe in you had to make a choice: Anita Hill or Clarence Thomas.
Right.
I took Anita. I thought she was far more credible than Clarence Thomas at the time of the hearings. However, there is no question, and ProPublica is back into it, and some of these investigative organizations, right, are really looking into. He's taken so much damn money from the one billionaire. Well, if he took it from one, there's going to be other sources too. And yet he can be the Supreme Court justice, one of the 9. You could make an argument that as far as the law is concerned, they are more powerful than the president. You could make an argument. And because while the president can do certain things, right, while Congress can do certain things, the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter of the Constitution. And that is our governing document. And unfortunately now it's always been political, but now it's so tainted, with a 6-3 court, that I would hate to take a liberal argument in front of them. Even if I was the best attorney in America, it wouldn't matter, because certainly the deck is not stacked in your favor if you're bringing those kind of causes. And I'm just kind of so fascinated by this, how the Republicans are out of touch with what America wants. But see, it doesn't really matter what America wants when it comes to Congress. It matters what your district wants, right? Because it's
all politics are local.
Exactly. I mean, and at the end, that's the case. If nothing else, all politics are local, because that's people don't start as a state senator. They usually start as a township committeeman or a city council person, or maybe even
board.
Or Jimmy Carter actually started on the zoning board. I mean, think about that, zoning board to president. And that's the other thing. I think this time, which it'll have a bearing. I don't know what bearing. There was an excitement when people came out of nowhere. Jimmy Carter, who had ever heard of the governor? The governor of Georgia. Nobody really heard it outside of the people in Georgia, right? And he emerges as a candidate. Bill Clinton came out of nowhere. Barack Obama, to a certain extent, came out of nowhere. And this time, the election is not going to be. If it is Biden Trump, we know both of them very, very well. Now, what impact does that have? Is that a better election? Is it a less enthusiastic election? It'll have some kind of shaping on it. I don't know. I know I've talked to a couple people who just despise Joe Biden, just like they despise Barack Obama, and I can't really, I don't really fault them because I despise Donald Trump, because in my reality world, Donald Trump is evil, and Joe Biden is not. In their world, it's the reverse. And I don't think that, I don't know, Brian, we talked about it time and time and time again. I don't know how those two worlds coexist. They don't. Divided we stand. When you chose that for the topic of this group and the topic of the shows that we do, we really are divided. Now, the question becomes, can we survive as a divided country? Well, we're going to find out, aren't we?
We are going to find out.
The jury is still out. Like one of the divisions, I mean, if the Republicans stick to their guns with the debt ceiling and things fold, I won't be getting a Social Security check. And I've got enough I can live. I don't need my. But if you were living check to check, you know how many people in America live check to check on Social Security? And yet, there will be a number of people on Social Security that in 2024 will vote for Republicans. Well, wait a minute. Again, there'll be a misunderstanding or a lack of depth of understanding. And basically, the president gets blamed for everything and credited for everything. Whether it's gas prices or the debt ceiling. And really, that's Congress, right? I mean, there's some talk of things Biden can do to circumvent, but the danger with that, Brian, is it really works best if the system works best. Like, I don't know that I want the president to have unlimited powers either, right? I'd rather have now than, I'd rather have Joe Biden unlimited powers over the Senate. But you got something you want to show here?
Well, no, I just wanted to mention that, I mean, I'm sure most of our members know that Trump has already said that he is telling GOP to default, to go through a default. Because what he wants to drive the economy, because he knows that the prices are coming down, inflation is coming down, that the only way to really destroy Biden is to just tank the economy. And there are people willing to do it. Now, Trump's willing to do it, but now is the rest of the Republican Party willing to tank the American economy?
It appears, as of tonight, what are we, 2 weeks away, right, from the absolute deadline? It appears tonight that there are. And I think what is interesting, again, is if there is a default, who benefits? Donald Trump. And Donald Trump probably has more experience on bad business decisions and defaulting and bankruptcies as anybody who's ever been purported to be a billionaire. Right? Name a successful business that he's had. I can't name one. Trump's Steaks, Trump's University, 3 casinos in New Jersey, driven. It's impossible. It's almost impossible to have 3 casinos go under in one. You can have one because of whatever, but Donald Trump, but it's, of course he's going to say to do that because, as you said, Brian, it will put him in better light. And remember when he said, "Only I can solve this"?
Right.
I think there's 2 dangers to that response. One is I think Trump actually believes that, but more importantly, I think there are people who believe Trump when he says that. And he's the last person I would want making any kind of decision for me. I can't think of anyone whose opinion I would value less. And that includes people who tonight are on death row for murder. Donald Trump to me is just,
Well, look, he's corrupt. I was thinking, in one of my language classes today, I was talking with the kids about, translation and translators. I think, well, you want to understand that it's important not only to have a translator just to be able to translate whatever's being said, the interpreter, I should have said interpreter, but more than that, the interpreter, who's interpreted, is somebody who is actually documenting what is happening. And when you have a president who's not allowing his own translator to come in, it worries me. So it's even something as mundane as that, having a translator. He's just no good.
The one thing I will be interested in, or not the one thing, one of the things I'll be interested in is how active his children become in the campaign and how active his wife becomes in the campaign this time around. Will she and take her son Barron, and I think it's clear that she views Barron as her son, not, and Trump could care less about Barron. And if it is indeed true that he has some that he's somewhere on the autism or on the scale, on the spectrum, as they say, Donald Trump would probably look at him as flawed. And
right.
And you say, well, how can a father do that? Well, it's Donald Trump. We're not talking
Donald Trump.
But will Don Jr. come out? I think he will. Eric, who the fuck cares what he does? I mean, he's a detriment. No matter, even to Trump, he's a detriment. Ivanka's the one that's going to be interesting. And the youngest daughter who just came out of law school. And so, what role do they play?
I don't know. Well, it's certainly not the brothers Karamazov, because at least in that the father was a rake, but at least some of the sons were good. Trump, it seems like they're all toxic. I mean, I can't think of it.
It's interesting if you look at that. I don't want to give away everything I want to talk about on Saturday, but I was thinking about that. Two of the hottest shows right now on television. One is Succession on HBO, and the other is Yellowstone. And they're very similar shows. They're outlandishly rich people with totally fucked up families battling to keep what's theirs, right? Succession is loosely based on Rupert Murdoch and Fox News. There's kind of a kind of there. And of course, Yellowstone is based on the American myth of the frontiersman who always goes for justice and all that. And that may account for some of the fascination with Trump's family, and Trump himself is, we view them, but he's no Kevin Costner, or he's no any of the Roy family or the Dutton family on Yellowstone. But Americans have that fascination, and I think that's one of the problems. There's a question: can a poor person win the presidency? And you know what the answer to that is, right? No, they can't. They either have to have their own money, which helps, or they have to get money from others. And they're going to be, look, nobody gives money without wanting something back. When you start getting into the really big contributions,
right.
Now that doesn't mean it's bribery. What I'm saying is you would give to a candidate.
There's strings attached to everything.
Yeah, that's going to be. And so, I think that is something that Trump was able to do. Kind of, he doesn't have a lot of obligations to anybody, and if he did, he wouldn't abide by them, right? I mean,
right.
he is the ultimate example of, what did you do for me in the last 10 minutes? I've never run across anybody in politics like that. What did you do for me last? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you did for me before, and yet people return. Steve Bannon will be back in the mix. In the campaign. Again, I mentioned before, it'd be interesting to see what Tucker Carlson has to do. I thought at one point he might he might move politics. I'm not so sure right now that he's going to move maybe after 2024. And that's another thing too. What impact does Trump have on those choosing to run? He is the front runner. Do you say, okay, I can't beat him? Or do you say, I'm going to go out there and get my name, recognized, and for the next election? And there are factors that we don't know. I mean, they always say, I always learned, I was covering small government. They would say, run, doesn't matter when, because if you run once and you lose, you'll have more name recognition than if you never ran before. So right. I assume that kind of applies at the presidential level also. But I will guarantee this, Liz Cheney, could not serve. I mean, she's already, they've thrown her out. And another thing we'll talk about as you look at the states, you've got your favorite, Mr. Manchin there in West Virginia, Senator Manchin, who is a Republican in everything but name. He's not. I mean, he runs as a Democrat, and there's people positioning there, and we just have to wait and see. And I think that's I think the problem is that this is not. We tend to overstate things, Brian, in life. But when Joe Biden said, and not because Biden said, just because it's true, that election in 2020 was for the soul of America. That's really what it was for.
Mm-hmm.
And now it looks like we're headed for another soulful challenge in 2024. And at this point, there are some disturbing numbers at this point that Trump defeats Biden. Not by overwhelming numbers.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Well, anyway, Dave, I want to thank you very much for doing this tonight, and I want to thank everybody who's watching. Thank you. I am going to post this to YouTube so those folks won't miss out.
Right.
It's hard to get a feel for what's happening on Facebook, but it was an experiment, and again, it's much appreciated.
I mean, we shouldn't get discouraged over an experiment. If we'd really been not serious, but because we were responding to a situation in real time. We wanted to get this in now. I mean, you could have groomed, by putting on Facebook 4 times a day for 2 weeks that this is coming, and again, people's time is valuable, and it would be interesting to know why. I mean, we kind of know why our following on YouTube on Saturdays comes, because we say we're a subset family of the family of Divided We Stand. The big family is a Facebook page. The people who watch at some point the Divided We Stand YouTube, a second, and then those who actually participate as an audience live. That's the smaller subset. People are busy, right? I mean, they have things to do. Not everybody's retired like I am, and can do pretty much what they want with their time. I really do appreciate anyone who takes their time to watch this in any form, whether it's Facebook, YouTube Live, wherever. So, and I think, again, we say it all the time, but it's true. I mean, whether you're Kaitlon Collins, right, Rachel Maddow, Tucker Carlson, or Brian Weinstein and Dave Price, none of us are anything without an audience. I mean, that's and the question becomes, how much do you want to cater to that audience? I'm glad we don't have to cater to our audience at all, because our audience comes to us for what they already believe, what we believe.
Right. We're not asking for money from anybody.
Not lockstep, right? No money, keeps that clean.
Right.
If we were trying, if we didn't have other sources of income, we might not be able, be able to do. But the moment you start, and politics is a good example, the moment you start taking money, obligations begin to build up.
Right, and we don't want to have any strings attached. So, Dave, I want to thank you. I'm going to shut down after this, and I'll talk to you during the week. And for the rest of you, thanks for joining in or watching after the fact. That's fine too. And please, again, consider becoming a subscriber to our YouTube channel if you're unfamiliar with it, or at least just check it out. And as a member, obviously you have to be a member to be watching this on Facebook. Please invite your friends. Again, we are not monetized. We're not looking for anything but people to commiserate with, and that we do quite well. So,
do you think there's any symbolism though in you being dark and me being light? Like, is that are you like representing evil and I'm representing the good?
I don't know.
Am I heaven and you're hell? I don't know. Anyway.
No, I just think it's probably just a balancing act, or just a coincidence, a quinky dink.
Okay, a coincidence, quinky dink.
All right,
Take care, Brian.
Dave, good friend. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye.